Gifted and out of sync. Welcome, friends, to Someone Gets Me. Diane here talking to you about being gifted and being out of sync with the norm. Now, if you already know you're gifted and you have been paying attention in the world, you will see that your reality is different than others. If you don't call yourself gifted and you don't realize you are, like I recently gave my new book, Someone Gets Me, to somebody who said, I'm not gifted, but I relate to everything in your book. Well, sir, if you relate to everything in my book, then maybe you have a belief system about the word gifted that is old, outdated, or doesn't apply, because that book is all about intense sensitivities in people who are gifted. So sometimes we let the words get in the way. Sometimes we get our belief systems get in the way about what something really is. So, in this episode, I'm going to talk today about being out of sync. Now, I know that being a twice exceptional person myself, I've been out of sync a lot in my life. Now, when I was younger, I didn't know I was out of sync. I just thought that nobody liked me. I had a really hard time internally. Not too many people could see it on the outside because I was great at pretending. But inside, I thought, how come I'm not like everyone else? The clothes I picked were different than everybody else. The color furniture I wanted, oh my God, the red couch story. There's all kinds of things. It goes on and on and on. Because as a gifted person, the brain development is different. And the way a gifted person deals and interprets the world varies within the gifted world and varies from non gifted people. And so sometimes I think that being normal is a benefit because the society is created for normal people and there's not as much inner issue and dialogue. I recently spent some time running a retreat for all gifted people. I mean, really high end researchers, and they're gifted. They don't use that word, but they have to be gifted in order to do the work they do. They do appreciate their intuition. They do appreciate their visionary skills, and they do appreciate those parts about them, but they don't use that word. And I think that people get stuck on the word gifted all the time. The issue here is that people with these characteristics are outliers, are out of sync, don't exactly dance to the drum that everyone else does. In fact, other people are marching and we're too busy dancing, right? That's the way it is. So let's look at four ways, four places, four situations where gifted is out of sync. And being out of sync in some situations is really beneficial. I'm going to tell you a story about that here in a minute. And one of the first things I think about is complex cognitive ability. If you transcribe most gifted people's language, there's complex sentences. They think in a different kind of way intellectually, ask really good questions, and can see the nuance underneath what's on the surface without a whole lot of effort. It's natural to them. So, cognitively, somebody who's intensely sensitive is going to be a little bit more complex and sometimes a lot more complex. And they will also have this way of thinking through things that is different than the norm. You see it show up sometimes in humor too. A gifted person's sense of humor is quite different than other people. And sometimes other people don't even get it for maybe 2 or 3 days, or maybe never get it. But other gifted people get it totally. I just spent a weekend with all gifted people, and some of the humor was hysterical. And a lot of people wouldn't have gotten it because it's just different. It's out of sync in that way. One example about this that I think of is a person I know was walking with one of their non-gifted friends, and they saw a little animal, and the animal had died and it was a little baby. And so obviously in the wild, out in nature, things happen. Well, the person's friend was, oh, the poor little thing. This person, the gifted person, was feeling empathy for the poor little thing, but also thinking about what species is it, what's going on, what's happening, what could have been going on, where's the mother, and kept going further and further and further and further out into the ecosystem in the complexity of the way they cognitively dealt with the situation at hand. Neither person was wrong and neither person was right. It's just different. So if you're one of those people who's cognitively complex, then when you're with people who are not, it's important that you back up and breathe and appreciate their way and understand that they may or may not understand your way. So it takes bridging, it takes a meeting of the minds in order for us to bring our complex ideas into the world because not all people see it as complex as we are. Sometimes we have to chunk it down because not everyone can see it. The second big thing I think about is emotional sensitivity. I my When I was younger, my mother used to say my bladder was too close to my eyes, and it was a real cut down. It was not pretty, and now I can say it without being upset. But most of my life, I was told that I was overly sensitive. Well, this emotional sensitivity I possess is brilliant when it comes to working with all my clients. It's brilliant because I can connect on an emotional level, on a feeling level without a word being said, or maybe there is no word. And I have an ability that the average person does not have with my emotional sensitivity. And so to have made fun of me for a very long time did a lot of damage. Thankfully, I ran into people and I sought opportunity to heal that damage. So if you're somebody who's emotionally sensitive and people have ridiculed you or made fun of you and there's damage relating to that, there is help. There is a way to get what you need. I help people with it all day long in my work because all of us who are very sensitive have experienced things that are not okay. I think all people have experienced things that are not okay. And it's how it gets in our system and how it's integrated and how it's interpreted that makes all the difference in the world. So we learn how to become more and more resilient and keep moving forward. We learn how to accommodate what's happened in our and how it happens in our world and how it lands on us. And we learn how to free ourselves of that bondage. It takes work and effort, but it's totally worth it. The third thing that I think of about gifted people that makes us out of sync is our imagination. I think there's a brilliance to the imagination and the visionary skills of somebody who is gifted and often out of sync with their counterparts. I'm working with somebody who can see ecosystems and connected dots like nobody I've seen. It's just an amazing concept. This person is a visionary, can see way into the project at hand where she works in a very specific field. And she also can orchestrate things. She knows the steps. She can see the steps. She can connect the dots in different scenarios to bring this beautiful synergy forward. She has a brilliant imagination. And then people have the brilliant imagination in the creative and fantasy world, like new music and poetry and writing. It comes out in lots of ways. And it can make us feel out of sync because we can see things others cannot see in our imagination. We have the ability to create what people have not yet been able to even see, much less understand. This is how a lot of gifted people, when you put all these things together, are the ones that have the opportunity to lead culture in a more transformed, more peaceful, more aligned way. So in my world, a lot of the twice exceptional and gifted people who are kind of dancing out of sync are the ones who are here to lead us as a people into something more amazing, whether it's their company into greater performance and greater opportunity, whether it's in a family system to move it forward so people get along better, whether it's in anyone's personal development, being able to be connected and emotionally intense and see things happen in a way so that out of sync part becomes valuable. And the last thing of these things that I see is intense sensitivities. Now, that I talk about in my book, Someone Gets Me, and intense sensitivities has to do with somebody who is gifted and has some overexcitabilities and also has a spiritual connection, has a great intuition or a great sense of empathy, can see and know and understand things that aren't immediately obvious in three-dimensional human world. These intense sensitivities can lead teams in businesses way beyond what they think their goals are. These intense sensitivities can bring cultures together and people together in new and exciting ways that have not yet been discovered. These intense sensitivities have a way to connect with the greater universe in a way that serves everybody. So, all four of these things together, being cognitively complex, having emotional sensitivity, having brilliant imagination, and being intensely sensitive, can set a person up to feel really like an alien. I remember in high school, I used to think I was an alien, and that everybody thought they knew me and everybody thought they saw me, but inside I was not what they saw. And funny, many years later, in some of our reunions, I realized that was not that far off. Now, it wasn't as heavy and as separating as I experienced it in the moment, but a lot of people didn't understand. But now, many years later, a lot of people have a great deal of respect for the work I do. So you will be at a sync until the world catches up with you. So I tell a lot of my gifted people that you're probably 2 to 5 years ahead of the average bear. So if you come up with a really great idea at work and everybody looks at you like you're nuts, write it down and then in a couple of years bring it up and you'll be a genius. Because when you have intuitive ability and when you have a complex way of doing things, you can see nuance. You can connect dots in ways that others are not able to. So they don't see what you're seeing. The difference is if you're looking at a 3D movie with a surround sound and they're watching a little black and white TV. We're watching the same show. We're solving the same problems. We're looking at the same content. However, the experience is radically different. It's not better or worse. It's just radically different. So I hear everything in, Dolby sound. I see everything in bright colors. I see it all and I'm very intuitive. And so I can feel things and know things without any physical evidence. And over time, I've learned how to listen to that and what my accuracy level is. And it's very accurate because when you pay attention and you validate and confirm what you're paying attention to, you start to see how it works in you because in all of us, it shows up differently. So, for a gifted person, the idea of doing things the average way or the minimum viable product, right? That minimum part, just do enough, just get by, is foreign to us. We don't know how to do that. It's not normal. So if you're caught in a work situation where people are saying, just get by, just do the minimum, and you're gifted, that is a trick question. Because, see, what naturally comes with our cognitive complexity is the sense of being correct, the sense of having things done in a way that makes sense, a sense of using the right word for the right thing, correct grammar, those kinds of things. It's not right fighting and it's not perfectionism. It's we want to do it correctly. So, and that's a natural. But if you work for an organization that doesn't care about correct, that only cares about the minimum in order to gain something over here, you're going to have a mismatch. You're going to be out of sync with that organization. That's the way it works. You also have a sense of justice, doing the right thing because it's the right thing, not because you're afraid you're going to get caught doing the right thing. I have so many of my clients right now that are really struggling with that sense of justice where they work, where there is inequity, where people are being treated unjustly, and in some cases it's them. And when they speak up to have things be accountable, They are told that accountability is punitive, which it is not. So there is a sense of justice, doing the right thing, having everything be done in a just manner. And that can be terribly out of sync when you're in a situation or a work environment, especially that does not have that as one of their key components of their life, right? The company doesn't care about justice, but you do. You will feel out of sync. Gifted people love to learn and explore things. Send them down a rabbit hole. I know somebody who I asked a question to, oh, let me see, when was it? It was probably several months ago. And that person sent me a message just the other day with further information down that rabbit hole because that's what they do. Gifted people do rabbit holes. So if you're somebody who loves to research and investigate and follow the next thing and follow and keep going and going and learning and going, then that means you're gifted whether you use that word or not. Non gifted people don't. Like in the beginning story about the person with the animal, the little baby animal. The one person not gifted just noticed it and felt sad. The gifted person cared about justice, cared about understanding, wanted to understand and explore and see the whole thing and create the entire scenario because that's how gifted people do it. So the gifted person felt very out of sync. And somehow that out of sync can also be interpreted as not good enough or can't do it or socially awkward. And so there's all these different situations when we're trying to get along in the world, when we're trying to be successful or have relationships with people who don't understand our nuances, or maybe the gifted person doesn't even understand their own nuance and they keep feeding into the wall. They keep going after the same thing without realizing that there's a different approach when you have all these intensities. Gifted people love to hyper focus too, right? And so that is a sign of ADHD, but it doesn't have to be that. There is an intellectual overexcitability and intensely sensitive people where there's lots of questions wanting to know the things and focus on things. Sometimes that hyper focus is out of sync with what's going on around you, whether it's a home in the family where you can be hyper focusing on a project you're doing or on something you're reading and things can be going on around you and you're not paying attention. The people in the family may not like that. They may not understand that. So you're always going to feel a little out of sync with the family until there's communication and understanding regarding the difference. Again, the difference is not because something is wrong with you. The difference is not because something is wrong with them. The difference is because there's a difference without judgment. Be aware and understand and educate yourself and the people around you how it works. If you have a tendency to hyper focus and annoys those around you, and you feel like out of whack with your family especially or maybe even your work, then you can find ways to accommodate these things. You can find ways to have time to be in hyper focus mode and time to not be. You're the one who has to take care of the discernment and understanding how to do it. Now, the need to know kind of goes with the hyper focus part, right? The need to know is very important. I notice with the people I work with over many decades now that if somebody's saying, well, why do I have to do this? Or why does that happen? Or how does this happen? How does this work? That it's very important to answer the question. And in substance abuse work that I used to do years ago, they would always say, well, just keep coming back, you'll figure it out. That does not work for a gifted person. A gifted person, and actually most adults when they're learning something new, if they know why, they do better and they learn better. So the knowing why, like, what's the point of this thing I'm learning, makes it so we learn it better or we do it better because now we understand. So that level of understanding is important for all adults, but it's especially important for gifted people and gifted children, right? Why am I learning this? What is the importance? How does it potentially integrate into my world? And so the answer to the why am I learning this is not because I said so. And it's like, what does it matter? then we can do something different. We can learn because we have a place we can put it in our world. And so there's a cost to all of this. There is a cost to our difference. There's a cost to being out of sync. There's a cost. There's a price we pay for having intense sensitivities and for being gifted and for being smarter than the average bear, whatever phrase you want to use, right? And one of the costs is people can get caught up in masking and pretending like there's somebody different than they are in order to get by. I call it AI versions, right? Like it looks like you and it talks like you and it sounds like you, but it's not you. And that is dangerous when we start hiding behind a role or a mask or an AI version that is not authentic and not real. So we live in a world that wants us to be authentic and real, but when we are authentic and real, we are told we're too much, we're too intense, we're too sensitive. Why do you have to ask so many questions? Can't you back it up a little bit? We get in trouble when we bring all of us forward. So I teach my people a lot about multiple peer groups and learning how to use inner boundaries to discern how much of you bring to the table in each situation. That way, we don't get made fun of, we don't have to mask, and we're able to feel satisfied in our relationship. So we're not as much out of sync. We also have the cost of, oh, how do you say it? Kind of being normal and feeling empty, trying to fit into a world that is not ours. And so our inner world kind of gets all I call it turbulent. It kind of just goes in circles, right? Because we're trying to do things the way others do, but we're not like them. And so it just makes all this inner turbulence. And in that we sacrifice our authenticity and we sacrifice who we are. So rather than doing that, I like to suggest to people that we have an understanding of our inner boundaries. So when I'm working with a gifted person or running a retreat or teaching a corporate team something important, I bring 100% of all my authenticity and my giftedness and my intensities and my intuition to the table. When I am with people who are not in those situations, whether I'm shopping or whether I'm in a situation where the people around me are not appreciative of those gifts, my inner boundaries shift a little, kind of like a cell membrane and what it lets in and out. And I only bring the part of me that can be received by wherever I am. So when I'm in the grocery store and I'm buying groceries or I'm at the farmer's market, I only need about 10% of me. I don't need 100%. I can be authentic in my 10%. I can be grateful and thankful and have the exchange for the good, yummy farmer's market food and the money I give them. And I can wish people a good day and I can smile and feel fulfilled in those interactions. And so I feel way less out of sync than if I walked in with my 100% gifted self open, really intense with all my light, and want to ask all of these questions that are seemingly irrelevant to the farmer's market person who's just trying to sell me their wares. It's not the time for a conversation about the science behind what they use or not, unless, of course, there's no one there and the door opens. So we can decide in a very fluid way how much of our authentic bright light we allow to come to the surface. And there's no wrong answer, and it's not being inauthentic. It's being aware and paying attention to who's receiving it. We don't want to blind them. We want to feel like we're loved and we're cared about, and we want to love and care about other people. But we have to understand that not everybody can handle the voltage. And so it's okay, like a dimmer switch in my dining room light. It's okay to use my inner boundaries. It's okay for you to use your inner boundaries to decide how much of you show up in the world. Because the truth is, the world is very complicated in lots of levels. There's lots of nuance. It can be a very lonely place. Because remember that people who are out of sync because they are intensely sensitive and gifted is about 1% of the population. So it can feel really lonely. It can feel heavy sometimes. It can feel complicated because all we really need in the world, all humans, is to be loved and heard. And if it's hard to be heard and you're not feeling loved because other people can't handle it, it's not because they're wrong. They just can't. So it's our responsibility to decide how can we bring ourselves forward in a way that works. Because being out of sync is very lonely. We can feel like we're the outcast. We may feel rejected. And all of those things um, help us feel more and more cut off from society. And I think that's the root cause, that feeling cut off from society or from others is a lot the root cause of a lot of existential depression and anxiety in people who have a lot of gifts and visions, and can see things. So what I like to say is if you're feeling out of sync, if you're feeling alone in the world, there are people who will get you and there are people who will hear you. Someone Gets Me is the name of this podcast and the name of my most recent book, On Purpose, because sometimes all we need is someone to get us. I hope this has been helpful. As always, if you want to chat about any of these things, do a get to know you call with me, 30 minutes on Zoom, and we can have a conversation about whatever you want, this episode or another one. My goal in the world is to open the door for people to ask questions and to see what is really for them. So until the next episode, if someone gets me, remember to keep your face to the sun so the shadows fall behind you, because you are a rock star. You are here on purpose with a mighty purpose. So go out there, let your light shine, be who you're meant to be, and realize that as a gifted person, you can come in sync in different ways to allow yourself to be free and authentic and whole. Till the next episode, be well.